anything? Okay, Mayor, you are ready to go.
Thank you. Welcome to the Township Committee meeting of March 11, 2021. Adequate and electronic notice of this Township Committee meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act and the Emergency Remote Meeting Protocol for local public bodies by posting the notice and agenda of the meeting on the bulletin board of the municipal building located at 1000 Route 10 in Whippany, and by posting notice on the Township's website, hanovertownship.com, posting notice on the outside front door of the municipal building, by emailing the notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, the Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. During the remote meeting, members of the public will be muted on Zoom. If you'd like to speak during the designated public comment portion of the meeting, please press 9 on your telephone or use the reactions icon on the Zoom app and wait to be recognized by the host, who will then unmute you to speak. When you are done speaking, the host will again mute you. Please be advised that there's a 5-minute limit on all public comments. Okay. Mr. Giorgio, would you please take a roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Committeeman Cahill.
Here.
Committeeman Gallagher.
Here.
Committeeman Mahalko.
Here.
Committeeman Francioli.
Here.
And Mayor Faramasca.
Here.
5 members in attendance, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, at this time, please rise. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the
and
republic
to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty and justice
justice
for all.
for all. Okay, our agenda is going to be a little bit different because we
Good
go
job,
right
Krista.
into the prayer.
Thank you.
The prayer.
Mayor,
The
don't
opening
forget the prayer. The
Deputy
prayer.
Mayor's prayer. Okay.
Mr. Still standing.
Ready, John?
Yes.
Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And from the Deputy Mayor's prayer, we're going to get into a special presentation. This special presentation is going to be by Chief Mark Roddy, Hanover's police chief, on the impact of New Jersey's new cannabis legislation upon minors and limitations that are being placed on our police to inform parents and guardians about minors consuming and/or possessing cannabis and alcohol. Chief, the floor is yours.
Most, if not everyone's aware, on February 22nd, Governor Murphy passed, I believe it was 3 acts of legislation in reference to the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana and cannabis products. This was a direct result of a ballot question that was back in the general election. The way the amendment was posed and put out to the public, and I'll actually read it because I think this is important, was, do you approve amending the Constitution to legalize a controlled form of marijuana called cannabis? Only adults at least 21 years of age could use cannabis. The state commission created to oversee the state's medical cannabis program would also oversee the new personal use cannabis market. Cannabis products would then be subject to sales tax and then authorized that stuff, right? The way that ballot question was posed was it was received 67.08% yes votes, 32.92% no votes. As it's worded, and again, the meat of that whole thing was adults at least 21 years of age could use cannabis. Somewhere in their infinite wisdom, a bill, and it was actually Senate Bill 3454, was slipped in literally almost last minute before Governor Murphy signed these things. It was voted on and passed, and Governor Murphy, like I said, signed it. I won't get into the nitty gritty. It's probably 30, 40 pages of items on that bill. The most concerning right now and the most pressing, and what I believe the public really needs to be aware of, is exactly what was in that bill, specifically pertaining to those who are under 21 years of age, and even more importantly, those under 18. Right now, law enforcement officers, as we speak, can no longer notify a parent if anyone under the age of 18, so you could be 1 year of age to 18. If you were caught for the first time with marijuana, hashish, cannabis products, or alcohol, either in your possession, you're under the influence of, or what have you, in no way, shape, or form are we permitted to notify a parent. That individual is literally given a piece of paper with their name, date of birth, address, whatever the offense was, marijuana, alcohol, what have you. And if they're not really impaired to a point where they're a danger to themselves, they are sent on their way. That to me is the most pressing, outrageous portion of this. We are no longer permitted to search anyone, and especially a juvenile, even observed in possession of plain view marijuana, alcohol, hashish, cannabis. Even if they have it in plain view, you can no longer search anything relative to their property, vehicle, anything of that nature. It goes further. You can now have marijuana in your motor vehicle. It's no longer a crime. It's been decriminalized. You can have marijuana. Doesn't say you can drive under the influence of marijuana, but you can certainly have it. There's no cause for us to even take any action, even in plain view, if we observe marijuana. This bill, again, it's Senate Bill 3454, actually will penalize law enforcement. If we were to notify a parent that we caught a 12-year-old with marijuana and said, hey, we caught your juvenile with marijuana for the first offense. If a law enforcement officer makes that notification, the law enforcement officer is subject to a third-degree crime charge as well as deprivation of civil rights. It's outrageous how this was slipped in. This township, and I would speculate most, at least I know in Morris County, has spent a lot, and this is decades, even preceding my tenure here, decades trying to educate our younger citizens about the dangers of drugs, alcohol, making them aware. It started with a DARE program we had years ago. That went dormant. Since I became chief, we have instituted the LEAD program in our schools, in which we actually go, and this is not an enforcement thing, this is an education program. Our goal never was, especially with juveniles, to be overhanded with enforcement. It was to educate, to make these kids aware of what the hazards are of this, and hopefully steer them away from that as they got older. I'm sad to report, again, this is current, and this is actually in Hanover Township as well as nationwide. There is a major opioid crisis going on, and that includes fentanyl. And in this township itself, there are multiple overdoses that we never used to see before, some resulting in death. And most of these, if not all, or certainly younger people, and sometimes even juveniles. This legislation is absurd. I really can't, to this day, and this is probably 2 weeks old now, can't really wrap my head around what's going on. A bit of good news on this is Senators Bucco and I believe it's O'Scanlan have introduced legislation, hopefully repealing at least the notification prohibitions on law enforcement and or relaxing some of these, actually putting law enforcement officers' careers and lives in jeopardy for trying to do what they think is the right thing. But again, that's now going to have to go through its course. I believe there's other people jumping on board. We the police department here, since my career started and to this day, nothing but the full support of the township officials, township elected officials. We continue to work together. I've had nothing but a positive relationship with our schools in this regard. And for something like this to come along, and quite frankly, as a parent, I'm offended, appalled, angry that certain politicians at the state level think that they are better suited to parent my children, your children, than you are. And that's basically what this is saying. It's taking away your right as a parent to be notified on a first offense. But, and again, I use this analogy. The first time you're caught usually is not the first time you're doing something. That's just when you got caught. There's actually statistics for drunk driving that the first time you're caught doing that, it's really not the first time you drove drunk. That's just the first time you got caught. So just because you catch a juvenile with alcohol, and somehow alcohol got embedded into this, And the ballot question specific was over 21 years of age, and it was specific to cannabis. Now alcohol is included in this. And this includes schools. If a student is observed at a school with alcohol and or cannabis marijuana products, our hands are just as tied as if we caught them out in a public park, a public street, anywhere. This is going to have really tragic consequences if it doesn't get amended and changed. Again, I urge you to look this up. Again, it was Bill 3454. It was part of that whole package that was passed by Governor Murphy February 22nd. It's outrageous. There is some blowback now, and hopefully it gets fixed. But again, as we sit here today, that is the law. That is what we are bound by. So again, I'm working diligently with the township, other chiefs in Morris County and the state, and we're trying to at least get the notification thing. If there's any questions that you haven't answered, a lot of it's still vague. So that's basically where we stand.
Thank you, Chief. We really appreciate you taking a leadership role in terms of educating us about the law, pointing out the tremendous risk that this poses to our minors. Hanover is a family community. It's a suburban community. We take great pride in our children. We want to have them having a good relationship with our police, especially when it comes to course correction behavior. So if there's a member of the Township Committee now who has a question for the chief, before we open this up to the public, now would be the time.
If I may. So first, Chief, thank you very much. I just wanted to share, and I do have a question as well, but just for the public. So Chief Roddy brought this up to us in legal session last week, or the last meeting, which is pretty much the first we had, really dove into what this legislation really meant. As a result of that, members of this committee, have reached out to state leaders and, Senator Bucco and others to express our concern around this, and I'm sure a lot of others. Chief Roddy has written an article. The East Hanover Police Chief has written an article. Letters to the editor. Everything that we can do to move this along and force some change. And thankfully, it seems to have worked to some extent. But my question is, because I haven't seen the legislation, I've only seen what I've read in the newspaper. It does address that first notification to parents, but Chief, does it impact at all your ability to search, or have we heard anything on that? Or are you still going to have your hands tied to that in that regard?
You're talking about the new proposed legislation?
Yes.
I believe they hit on it somewhat. I think they were more interested in the parental notification. And again, I haven't seen what it is they're presenting. Right. I'm going by basically what I'm gleaning off the internet and some other, we have chiefs at the state level kind of grab onto the stuff that's going on in Trenton. As far as the search part, I don't know that is specific in there. And again, this department, when there has to be an arrest or we have to literally put a juvenile into a formal system, we will certainly do so. It's never our first option. I'm more interested in, and I can speak for the majority, if not all of my officers, we would prefer to educate and steer these younger people the right way. Once they're adult, they make the decisions they make. That's fine. This is, it really, our hands are certainly tied as we sit here today as far as searches. And again, what was legal February 21st, and that's, how we were trained since whenever the inception of these search and seizure laws were, all of a sudden, boom, you make an honest slip up per this legislation, and you literally are facing potential criminal and civil charges as a law enforcement officer for doing what was your job February 21st and prior. To put this in there, I don't see the logic. I don't want to get political with it. I think it's a certain party's ideology. It certainly isn't mine, and so I don't. If nothing else, I think that if the parents could at least be notified, step one, at least that's something. But and again, I'm probably going off the record here. Off track. If you read the legislation, it's anybody under 18 can possess any amount of marijuana. So it's not like a couple of roaches. It's not a joint. They could have 10 pounds of it in a backpack, and we can do nothing. So if I was a drug runner, drug dealer, Why would I not just give it to somebody under the age of 18 and let them run my dope for me? Because guess what? The cops can't search that person. Even if you see them holding a bag of marijuana and they have a backpack that reeks of marijuana, you cannot search that bag. So if I was a drug runner, which obviously I'm not, why would I not go down that road and say, here you go. I'm not going to get caught. I give it to this kid who's under 18. Let that kid do the dirty work for me.
Thank you,
And that's
Chief.
certainly a possibility. And as we see there right now, there will be literally pretty much nothing we can do about it.
Do any other members of the Township Committee have questions for the chief about this legislation?
Chief, if I might, Mr. Mayor, and again, thank you for that presentation, Mark. As usual, you're spot on. We appreciate it. I know in some earlier meetings with the Township Committee, you addressed your frustrations with this legislation. And at that time, you had also said that many of the chiefs brought this to the attention of the State Attorney General. You were not satisfied with his responses, but it's his role to interpret enforcement on matters like this. Was he not equipped to answer any of your concerns with youth?
I don't know that he's not equipped. And again, we literally had maybe a 5-minute, it was probably an hour presentation from the Attorney General's office, but he spoke possibly 5 minutes in the beginning. This is when this was relatively fresh. The impression I got was they were somewhat blindsided by a lot of this as well. He claims to not be on board with at least some of these provisions. However, you know, it's the hand he's dealt, we're dealt. They will come out with some frequently asked question sheets, and it's kind of basically telling us what we can't do. It's really not saying what you, it's kind of like, don't do this or else. So that's really where we're at. And quite frankly, it's a lot of it's, I have officers walking around in eggshells, as I'm sure the rest of the state is, because God forbid you make an honest, and under this legislation, mistake, your career in life could be literally in jeopardy by doing what you perceive to be the right thing, which to me is contrary to the oath we take when we're sworn in as a young police officer. You know, it's contrary to everything we're taught and what's ingrained in us, at least those of us, and again, it's 99.9% of us are good and have the right intentions. So this is all, it's just counterintuitive to anything that I ever stood for, ever believed in, and I can speak for this whole department. It really, so I think they're trying to peck through it and get us as much guidance as they can. The county prosecutor's office is also trying. It's still fresh. But like I said, there was really literally no heads up. Bam, this was passing, and here we sit. So.
How will you address vehicle stops at this point?
Vehicle stops right now, like I said, just the odor of marijuana and or alcohol for that matter. You can still do your standardized roadside testing if you believe the driver is impaired. However, the driver is not impaired or doesn't, you know, you can't, the testing comes out, off they go. They could be sitting there with bags of marijuana in their car. Alcohol is still not permitted to be an open container in a car. However, marijuana is no longer illegal to have in a vehicle. And again, the motor vehicle thing is a whole nother Pandora's box, which we're not anywhere near equipped to handle this. Like drunk driving, we've had mechanisms in place for decades now as well. Through iterations of what used to be known as a breathalyzer, then we moved on to an alcotest. We're on the second alcotest machine, which is more modern. We're in the process, the state of implementing a third alcotest. For marijuana, there is no such device as of right now. There's things in the works that's similar to a breath test or you know, breathalyzer, but they don't exist, or they're certainly not ready for deployment in New Jersey. So the only way to actually prove a case for a driving impaired under marijuana, you would need a testimony from what's known as a drug recognition expert. That's really a full-blown course. We have, I believe, 3 on staff here, but again, you're hoping that they're working and or surrounding town has one working to come out perhaps run these tests. Absent that, you can pretty much drive impaired with under marijuana influence, and it's a tough one to prove.
Any other questions from the Township Committee for the chief? Seeing none, what I'd like to do is get a motion to open this part of our meeting to the public. So if there's a member of the public who has a question for the chief
So
will
moved.
address those.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, if there's a member of the public who has a question of the chief about this law, now would be the appropriate time. Use, as indicated earlier, the press 9 on your telephone, or the reactions icon on the Zoom app, and wait to be recognized. So it's now open to the public for questions of Chief Roddy.
Must have been really good, or really bad.
Did a great job, chief.
And we'll hold on for another 15 seconds or so in case somebody's having trouble.
Yeah, I have a chat. Somebody's,
Terry Baird has her hand up.
there's a direct message. Let's hold on one second. It says, so as it stands now, what is our workaround? PD cannot inform parents. Can they inform someone else who can get to the parents? In this meantime, to get this change, we need to work together to protect our young children. We need to work around, is that a possibility? Can we keep the officers safe in their role, but allow us to help us help this children using the drugs?
And again, this is so nebulous. I don't know that anybody in law enforcement is comfortable. I've been given no guidance as far as working around something. I know I wouldn't suggest any of my officers take a chance and somehow covertly notifying a parent if it's the first. And again, if it's like the second offense, which again, tracking is, we have an in-house tracking system here. Let's say a juvenile is caught in East Hanover, and then they get caught a second time in Hanover. Right now, there's no meshing where we know that that's their second. As far as we know, that's only the first year. Second offense is on. The parent gets the same piece of paper notification, but again, that goes to third offense, fourth offense, fifth offense, sixth offense. It's really just a piece of paper. There's no penalties. There's no. I mean, there is some. You provide them information on drug counseling services.
Thank you. Any other member of the public have a question for the chief?
I have Terry Baird. Terry, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am. Okay, hi, good evening. Terry Baird, 180 Parsippany Road in the Whippany section of Hanover. My question to Chief Roddy would be how can parents support you in getting this changed? What would you recommend that they do in order to facilitate this? And if possible, do you think there's any kind of a timeline where this could be turned around a little bit to better favor the children?
I believe I put out my statement. First of all, get a hold of your state representatives, legislators, and honestly, I believe the ones that represent this area are on board. As a matter of fact, Senator Bucco is definitely the sponsor of at least one of these fixes. I think there's some other Democrat sides that are proposing some other things. God only knows what's in those. By all means, hammer those people with your disgust and non-support of this and the outrage. And again, I stated this before the beginning. I honestly don't think that this ballot question would have gotten the support, nearly the support that it did, where this stuff laid out in the open. It was deceptive. There was no public debate on it. Stuff was embedded in this thing that has nothing to do with what was on the ballot. You want to legalize marijuana for people over 21, there's arguments we make pro and con. People wanted that part of it, that's still, do I have issues? Yeah, but okay, that's the first one. It's under, but it's actually under 20, but it's specifically to be under 18. So as of right now, and again, I don't think this is going to be a quick fix. It's government, it's legislation, it's not to be amended. I'm hoping it's quick, but as we stand here, where it sits right now, just get a hold of your state legislators and go from there and just express your outrage and displeasure with how this came about.
Any other questions for Chief Roddy?
Is anyone else having issues with
Yeah.
the chief's audio?
Chief, your microphone is bad.
Yes.
So you can't hear me?
It's very
No.
mumbly.
It's very buzzy.
Yeah, we can understand you, it was just a little muffled.
Okay.
All right, at this time, seeing no additional questions from the public, let's close this portion of the meeting to the public. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
On behalf of the Township Committee Chief, we thank you again for coming to this and giving us a special presentation. Our appeal to members of our community is simple. Please support Chief Roddy. Please inform your legislators. Contact them, email them, phone them, that this law needs to be changed ASAP. In addition to addressing the notification of parents issue, which is greatly needed, Hanover Township's committee is trying to notify New Jersey State that we need to go one step further about protection of minors, and we need to have them take into account the potential impact of the mental health of the minor, the developing brain from the use of cannabis. This is a significant risk. It needs to get addressed. There are too many questions, not enough answers, and we need to be very proactive with the state to bring to their attention that we can't have the lost generation due to failures on their part to properly understand the impact and the implications of the use of cannabis widespread with minors. All right, so at this point, we're going to turn the meeting back to Mr. Giorgio for communications.
Thank you, Mayor. As we go through the formal agenda, ladies and gentlemen, the first item on the formal agenda, communications, we have a letter of resignation from DPW employee Michael Campanile, effective tomorrow, Friday, March the 12th. In accordance with policy, may we have a motion from the Township Committee to accept the letter of resignation?
so moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Francioli,
Second.
second by Mr. Gallagher. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, we have the approval of the Township Committee's regular meeting minutes of February the 11th. May we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gallagher,
Second.
second by Mr. Mahalko. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the next portion of business. This is public hearings and adoption of ordinances. There are two related ordinances dealing with the budget. The first is docketed as ordinance number 6-2021, dealing with the authorization of a 2.5% increase in the appropriation limit of the township's calendar year 2021 current fund budget, and establishing a cap balance, a cap bank rather, all in accordance with statute. The second related ordinance is an ordinance of the Township Committee reducing the 2 cents per $100 of assessed valuation dedicated open space trust fund tax rate to 1 cent per $100 of assessed valuation during calendar year 2021 only, and further authorizing the Chief Municipal Finance Officer to collect the 1 cent dedicated open space tax. Both ordinances, with their respective ordinances, notices of introduction, appeared in full in the February 17th issue of the Daily Record. So at this time, may we have a motion to conduct the public hearing on both ordinance 6 and 7/2021.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gallagher,
Second.
second by Mr. Faramasca on roll call. Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Is there anyone wishing to be heard on either or both ordinance 6-2021 or 7-2021. Okay, seeing none, hearing none, may we now have a motion to close on the public hearings for ordinance 6 and 7-2021.
Motion.
Motion to close.
Motion by Mr. Cahill, seconded by Mr. Mahalko. On the motion to close the public hearing on both ordinances, Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Haramoska.
Aye.
So approved. Now on adoption, both these ordinances with their notices of introduction on adoption will appear in next week's issue of the Daily Record. So now we need a motion for adoption on 6
So
and
moved.
7. Motion by Mr. Haramoska,
Second.
second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Haramoska.
Aye.
So adopted on both ordinances. Ladies and gentlemen, now we proceed to page 2 of our agenda. We have the public hearing and consideration of adoption of the township's 2021 current fund budget in the amount of $27,850,236.17. Because this year was not a self-evaluation of the budget, the Division of Local Government Services in the Department of Community Affairs was required by law to review the budget, and the budget was given approval for public hearing and adoption this evening. I do want to add, however, because of the COVID pandemic, we had a reduction in revenue during 2021 at the Bee Meadow Swimming Pool. Because of that, the Division of Local Government Services requires the township to adopt 2 resolutions which will average the revenues over a 3-year period for inclusion in the 2021 current fund budget. This is basically a housekeeping thing that we have to do, but it is a requirement of the state of New Jersey. So before we get to those resolutions, the first thing we need to do is a motion to convene the public hearing on the adoption of the 2021 current fund budget.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Haramoska, seconded by Mr. Cahill. On roll call to convene the public hearing, Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Haramoska.
Aye.
Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to comment on the proposed $27,850,236.17 current fund budget? If so, please raise your hand. Krista, do we have anyone who is reacting?
No.
None at all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, may we have a motion then to close the public hearing?
So moved.
So moved
Second.
by Mr. Haramoska, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call to close the public hearing on the 2021 current fund budget, Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Haramoska.
Aye.
And then before we proceed with a adoption, I'm going to read into the record the 2 resolutions that require your approval. The first is a resolution of the Township Committee utilizing the 3-year average method in computing the swimming pool enterprise fund swimming pool fees revenue affected by COVID-19, and further directing that a certified copy of this resolution be filed with the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services. So at this time, may we have a motion for the approval of this first resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Mahalko,
Second.
second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
aye,
So approved. The second resolution is a resolution of the Township Committee approving amendments to the anticipated revenues and dedicated revenues from the Swimming Pool Enterprise Fund utility of the Township's 2021 current fund budget. And then this is because of a loss of revenue in 2020 due to COVID-19. So may we have a motion to approve the second resolution, which also has to be filed with the Division of Local Government Services.
Make a motion.
So moved by Mr. Mahalko,
Second.
second by Mr. Francioli. On roll call, Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
aye,
So approved. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in a position for adoption of the 2021 current fund budget. So may I have a motion for the adoption of the 2021 current fund budget?
so moved,
So moved by Mr. Faramasca,
Second.
second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for adoption of the budget. Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
aye. And I'd like to also thank those who led this budget process. This is a challenging budget. Mr. Esposito, our CFO, Mr. Giorgio, the department heads, members of the Township Committee, all worked very hard to develop a budget that protected the services, the infrastructure of our municipality, preserved the employment staff, as well as minimize the impact to our residents. So for that, we thank all of you.
Thank you, Mayor. And that budget is now adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, on page 2, we now have introduction of ordinances. And I would ask you to look at that, ordinance number 8, 9, 10. We have one additional ordinance for introduction this evening. And this ordinance, I'm going to read the title into the record, was discussed with the township attorney this evening during the closed executive legal session. And the title of ordinance number 11-21 is as follows: an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover prohibiting the operation of any class of cannabis business within its geographical boundaries and amending Chapter 120 of the Code of the Township entitled Drugs and Drug Paraphernalia. Now, ordinance numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11 will be published in full with their respective notices of introduction in the Morris County Daily Record, the issue of March 17th, 2021. Copies of all these ordinances are available in the Business Administrator Township Clerk's Office for public inspection. So with that, we will take all 4 ordinances as a consent agenda. May we have a motion to introduce ordinances 8, 9, 10, and 11?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Gallagher,
Second.
Second.
second by Mr. Mahalko and Mr. Francioli. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Yes.
and Mr. Faramasca.
Aye,
So introduced. Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the resolutions as a consent agenda. I would ask you to look at items A through M, and if any members of the Township Committee have any questions about any of the resolutions, please feel free to ask at this time. So that's A through M.
Joe, on C, rescinding of a inactive pocket puttering license,
Yes.
what property is that referred to?
Well, what happened, Ron, we have a pocket license held by Hanover Hospitality, which holds that license. It's a plenary retail consumption license. And they paid all their fees back in July, both to the township and to the ABC. What they failed to do was file what is known as a 1239, which is a continuation of the pocket license. So it was kind of done backwards. So ABC notified us last week that we have to rescind that approval that was given in July and then redo the approval with a new resolution. So that's all it
Good.
means. No, it was really a bureaucratic thing. Any other questions on any of the other resolutions?
Motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Francioli to move on the resolutions as a consent agenda. We have a
Second,
second by
second,
Mr. Gallagher on roll call for approval of the resolutions as a consent agenda. Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
aye,
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
So approved. We now move to page 5 of the agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Item 11, payment of our bills, $5,197,414.08. May we have
I'll
it?
make a
May we have
motion
a
to pay
motion?
the bills.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion by the mayor,
second,
second by Mr. Cahill. On roll call to pay the bills, Mr. Cahill,
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher,
aye,
Mr. Mahalko,
Yes.
Mr. Francioli,
Aye.
and Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
So approved to pay the bills. Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee, I thank you. The agenda of the municipal clerk, business administrator is now clear. I thank you.
And we thank you, Mr. Giorgio. At
Turn
this
the meeting
time, I
back
get a
over to
motion
you.
to open the meeting to the public.
So moved.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, at this time, if there's a member of the public who would like to address the Township Committee, okay, you know the drill. It's 9 on your telephone or the Zoom icon reaction key. Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Maybe we get a motion to close this portion of the meeting.
So
so
moved.
moved,
Okay, all in favor?
aye,
Aye.
All right, at this time, we invite Mr. Samrau, the municipal attorney, to provide a report on the status of the township's affordable housing obligation. Mr. Samrau, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Township Committee. As far as the affordable housing process goes, all of our documents have been submitted to the court timely for consideration of closing out the case and the third round approval of the plan. There are no other changes. As I said, everything's in order. It's now the subject of final review, and we are hoping by the middle of April that Judge Gauss will consider all of the evidence and provide us with a final judgment of compliance. And that's the update, Mayor. Thank you.
Samrau, that's a great update. We're looking forward to the day when we can put this in the rearview mirror. It's been an arduous task, a significant challenge, and it's been a significant time drain to all members of this governing body and all the professionals that support this governing body.
Understood. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Cahill. This is under the umbrella of great things happen in Hanover Township. And this is really big news. And Committeeman Cahill is going to walk us through this news, which is it's really fabulous. Okay, Ryan, the floor is yours.
So John, thanks. I didn't really want to take your tagline, so thank you for putting that out there first for me. In previous meetings, not every meeting, but we've talked about the desire by the Landmark Commission to gain ownership of the Joseph Tuttle House located on Route 10. They their master plan, their plan has been for years, long before I even started on the committee here, to acquire that property, acquire that house, and make it a museum for the history of Hanover. We had gotten to the point, just a quick history, you know, over my past 3 years, probably 2 or 3 times, we began talking about setting aside some monies, the township, and putting them into, you know, the cigar box, as Ron would say, so that should the opportunity come up to purchase that property, we'd be in a better position to do so with the combination of our own money and, of course, grants and whatever else we could acquire from the state or the county. In the end, it turned out that we won't need to do that. By the grace of the Spada family, they have chosen to donate the house, the property adjacent to the house. And, you know, I've mentioned this before, you know, very, very generous on their part. This is coming to fruition now. It looks like the target now is April 1 for a closing date. So we're all very, very excited about that. It's going to be the beginning of a long journey as far as what becomes of the house after that. You know, we are still going to pursue grants and look for other sorts of funding to help to rehabilitate the house and make it appropriate for a museum and safe for a museum. At the same time, the Landmark Commission is creating a 501c type organization that will allow them to actually accept donations from corporates and members of the community to help in that regard as well. So yeah, this has been a long time coming, and really, really happy to see it happening. It's going to be a great addition to the township and to our history. So that's it. Just really, we're all very, very happy. I know the Landmark Commission is thrilled that this is actually coming to fruition.
Fabulous news, Brian, and thanks for sharing. Any member of the Township Committee have a question for Mr. Cahill concerning this whole new initiative, new chapter in our history?
I think it's wonderful, Brian, you followed through on this thing. You've been at it a while, we do know that. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful gesture on the part of the family that they would give up this property, the Tuttle House, right next to the Whippetong Cemetery as well. It fits so well. The use will be so perfect for us. We can't thank them enough. It's very, very nicely done. Thank everyone on Landmark for a job well done.
Will do.
Any other commentary from the committee? Okay. All right, seeing none, we're going to ask for a motion to close this portion of our meeting, but we're not closing the meeting because we're going to reconvene to part of our meeting that we recessed. So may I get a motion to close this part of our meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. Don't go anywhere, members of the Township Committee, because we are now going to reconvene the recess portion of our meeting, and I'm going to read into the record the following. Okay, whereas the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231 of the laws of 1975 provides that a public body may exclude the public from that portion of a meeting at which the public body discusses a certain matter for which confidentiality is required as permitted in Section 7B of the Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of Township of Hanover, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. Following matters only to be discussed by the Township Committee on a confidential basis as provided for in Section 7B of the Act. The item that we're going to cover is personnel. This will be done in closed session, business administrator and township clerk search update. These matters will be considered at this time, and the public shall not be admitted to this discussion. The results of the discussion set forth above to be conducted in closed session will be disclosed to the public if possible when the meeting is reconvened. So we are reconvening this portion of our meeting. So at this time, if there's members of the public, Krista, that are participating, we need to close them from participating in this personnel discussion.
Mayor, do you want Fred to take over this portion of the business?
And for this part of the meeting, the individuals that should remain in this meeting are Mr. Giorgio, Mr. Byrne, the members of the Township Committee, as well as Fred, who will take over leading the Zoom part of our meeting, and Rob. Okay? So all others, I thank you for your help this evening and wish you all the best. Enjoy some of the warm weather.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, Jerry.
Night.
Great.
John, I'm gonna go.
Okay, thank you, Ace. We
Thanks, guys.
understand. You have a family issue. We
Good night,
respect
Ace.
that.
Take care,
Good night,
guys.
Ace.
Thank you very much.
Good night, Ace.